Hello and welcome to episode 14 of The End of the World. My name is Edgar Mannheimer and I'm joined by my esteemed co-host Sam Karlshamre. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yes, that's a new name for this segment on the pod. The End of the World, part 14 today.
Part
Yes.
14 today. Yeah, so the enormous bombshell. I think we can say it's a bombshell. Donald Trump has won the presidency. He is the 47th and the 45th president of the United States.
We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
A historic loss for the Democrats, historic victory for the Republicans. They look like they're in the Senate and the House of Representatives. It looks like they have a majority there as well. So they have the three branches of government with Donald Trump at its head. We're going to get to how this affects the Middle East, which is the topic of our show, of course. But Sam, can I just get your spontaneous, human reactions to this tragedy?
Yeah, it's worrying. It's kind of horrifying, actually, in a way, but also not that surprising. I mean, I did think that Harris would pull it together at some point, but like by yesterday, I was like, this hasn't happened. So I was
Yeah.
not surprised when Trump actually won. Specifically when the numbers came out on the economy and how people viewed that. As we all know, it's the economy, stupid, famous, the eternal catchphrase of all American political campaigns since the 90s.
Yeah.
I think that is still true. I mean, yeah, as you said, I mean, Harris underperformed drastically, I mean, very um, clearly across the board, basically, which I would say that's probably up to the economic situation in the US, where a lot of working class people feel that they've gotten poorer under Biden, and they're not mistaken, actually, which is the problem.
It's a
You can blame
cost of
that
living
on
crisis.
you can blame it on the pandemic, on, inflation being something that just kind of happened, which wasn't Biden's fault, perhaps. Perhaps it was. But regardless, people are worse off today than they were under
Yeah.
last year of the Trump presidency, which is, that is always going to be a bad thing, especially if you're on the left. You're trying to win an election, talking about rights and values. Sure, those are important things, but the left will always have to, I mean, if we even want to call the Democrats the left anymore, but you need to show ordinary people that you are on their side in terms of making their lives livable. And I think, frankly, I mean, especially among Latino voters, etc., people are talking a lot about how they're like are conservative on abortion and stuff. I think it's
Mhm.
much more a question of class voting, with Black voters being the only demographic that are still basically 100% or 85%, I think, Democratic, which isn't so weird given that Kamala Harris is Afro-American and, Trump is an explicit racist. So,
And
so I mean,
yet,
what else would they
and
do?
yet.
I mean, so I think I mean, that's a big thing, but also to touch, of course, on the Gaza war. We've seen some fascinating numbers coming in.
Yeah.
Dearborn,
So
yeah,
so Dearborn, Michigan, that's where there's a lot of Arab Americans live there. And the entire state of Michigan, but because of certain pockets of Michigan, has been in play in terms of, a lot of people have been writing and talking about the fact that that could swing the vote, even though Arab Americans make up, just over 1% of registered voters. That is a swing state, and that is a crucial swing state that it looks like um, Trump has taken. So sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to introduce the segment. So please give us the
absolutely.
numbers. How does Dearborn look?
No, exactly as you said. I mean, Michigan is the only state where the Arab vote is in any way kind of politically significant. Dearborn then being like the one area where they're so heavily concentrated that you can actually just look at the numbers for that place and kind of get a feel for how the Arab American vote has played out. And these numbers are insane, actually. I mean, it's 45% goes to Trump, a person who in another, this is the exit poll, so it's not the final numbers, but they're reliable, which is fascinating. I mean, given that in another exit or in another opinion poll just a couple of weeks ago, I think we mentioned that on the pod earlier, like I think almost a majority of the Arab American vote said explicitly, yes, we think that Trump hates us. They're still voting for him. I
Yeah.
mean, they're saying
Yeah.
like is he anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, racist? Yes, he is. Who will you vote for? We'll vote for him. The
Yeah.
question of punishing the Democrats, clearly, this is also a working class community. It's all, car factory,
Hmm.
it's very close to Detroit. It's kind of working class. Perhaps, let's say on social questions might be conservative, but in terms of economic policy, it's a very left-wing community. In any demographical way you would analyze it, it should be a democratic stronghold, and it's
Yeah.
also been that before. Last election, I think, and even Hillary Clinton got 65% of the vote in Dearborn. So this is a
Yeah.
huge shift.
I think last time on the digest we were talking about the parallels to the Iraq War
Yeah,
20 years ago, and how a lot of people are coming out now saying, "Oh, it was a mistake." Like David Frum, for example, the infamous David Frum, who wrote George Bush's speeches and now says the Iraq War was a mistake. And I think that we should consider the fact that a lot of people in Michigan are of Iraqi descent, and that sure, it may be a democratic stronghold. It's usually the Arab vote is a reliable vote. However, when it comes to Republicans and Democrats, there was almost like a consensus about invading Iraq,
yeah,
and there's almost a consensus about Israel's policy in Gaza. At least
yeah,
in terms of the effect of it. I mean, the US can stop this genocide, it doesn't. So
yeah,
I think that some Arabs or people with Arab descent are looking at the Democratic and the Republican Party as it traditionally has been before Trump. There's a huge difference in terms of what we receive in the US, but when it comes to how they treat us in our home countries, the policies are very similar. So when Trump comes and says, I am something completely different and I'll make a deal and we shouldn't have invaded Iraq, it was a mistake, he's been
yeah.
saying it for years. I feel that maybe out of it purely out of desperation, they're like, well, at least it's something different.
He
Maybe
might
he
fix this.
won't. Yeah, and
Why not try something new, right?
personally, I don't think so at all. But I understand the desperation, and I would never judge anyone for not voting for Genocide Joe and Killer Kamala.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I totally agree with that. And I mean, the whole thing is also if you look at, people questioning people on, there's been this journalists walking around questioning, asking people on the street, why do you like Donald Trump? And a lot of people are talking about he will bring us peace.
Yeah,
From a European perspective or a Swedish perspective, you see like, letting down Ukraine is some kind of, being a traitor to world peace or something. But from
yeah,
a purely American perspective, it's the idea that we're involved in all these wars. We have no fucking clue why they're going on. We don't
yeah,
really care. People are going to die, just like in Iraq. Why would we do this? And Trump says, I'm going to stop these wars.
yeah. We should have seen
I'm
it
not
coming.
saying I agree with his Ukraine policy or even less his Israel policy, but it's not because people want, love Russia or want genocide or something. They're voting for him because they think he will be able to stop this
Of
stuff.
course. Look,
Some people,
we should have seen it coming. Trump and the Republicans managed to position themselves as the anti-war party.
yeah,
They keep saying we don't want a war in Ukraine, and the Democrats keep saying we want a war in Ukraine.
yeah,
I mean, most people don't read foreign policy analysis and stuff like that. They're just like, it's an election based off of vibes, which obviously is the fault of the Republicans, defunding the educational system and stuff. Like people are kind of stupid in that country more than before. Like if so one person says I don't want a war, I want to make a deal, and another person says I think we should keep fighting.
yeah,
Putin, for all his faults, he's not Hitler. He's not, I mean, people can't perceive the fact that he's threatening the world. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
they would rather have, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, that's what most people think. Let's have a deal with Putin. I don't care.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the same thing, of course, during the World War II, if we're going to go that far back, is like before Pearl Harbor, most people in the US would not want to go to war over anything.
Yeah,
But then
exactly.
the US was attacked. The same thing with 9/11. It's the idea that
Yeah,
they're under personally, the US is somehow under attack, then people are fine with going to war for a while. But
Yeah,
in general, since the Vietnam War, basically, people have been like, don't get us involved in weird shit overseas that we have
exactly.
nothing, it gives us
Yeah,
nothing. And they're not wrong,
yeah, yeah,
from an American perspective. And
of course.
then the question comes like, is it a good thing for the world that the US keeps, getting involved in things? It's a very complex question, but from a purely American voter perspective, I can totally see why you would just go for the guy who says we're not going to get involved in weird wars overseas against people we
Look,
don't really care about.
it's just a better argument, guys. Like, come on, you should have seen this coming.
Also, they took the vote for granted. I mean, I think they did that up
Uh,
until the last days when Kamala Harris went to Michigan and said, like, I will bring, the hostages home, but also there will be ceasefire,
that's just
weird
bull.
argument just coming from, out of left field from nowhere.
And I want to say this year has been difficult, given the scale of death and destruction in Gaza, and given the civilian casualties and displacement in Lebanon. It is devastating. And as president, I will do everything in my power to end the war in Gaza.
On the last
Well,
day of the campaign,
well, listen, lest we forget Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's huge outstretched hand to the Arab community with her
Yeah.
beautiful Arabic writing. Um,
You
that
love that part.
Yarli Itov.
I just got this tweet, which I think was kind of funny, where like sending Bill Clinton to say Arabs deserve to die, and then sending Liz Cheney, whose father literally orchestrated the murder of 1.5 million Arabs to Michigan, probably wasn't the best strategy.
Yeah, probably wasn't.
It's just,
Okay.
they're just blind to the fact that these people might actually, punish them. And I think, whatever you think about the outcome, I mean, people do have the right in a democracy to vote, to to protest vote. If they think
People
you're
have the right to do
bad
what the
enough, they
fuck
have the
they
right to vote
want
for
in
someone
a
else.
democracy. Absolutely. But since we're reading tweets, I found one kind of funny. I don't agree with it necessarily, but I think it's funny. Old school fascism has defeated intersectional fascism. It's not as simple as that, obviously, guys.
Oh, of
Okay,
course.
so should we move on to like how does this affect the Middle East? How do you think that a Trump presidency is going to affect? Let's begin with Gaza, policy specifically on Gaza. I'm personally, I think it's going to be really bad. I think resettlement of Gaza is a real prospect, and an escalation of the war is a real prospect. What do you think, Sam?
I agree. I mean, I think the baseline is what Trump has said, and there's no reason to think that people behind the scenes would stop him from doing what he says he wants to do, is basically to give Netanyahu a free rein to do whatever he wants, including, of course, finishing the war in Palestine by just killing everyone. Probably the same for Lebanon, and perhaps even an all-out kind of confrontation with Iran. So, I mean, yeah, it doesn't look good at all. And there's no reason to think, as I just said, I mean, it's no reason to think that this is just what Trump says. I think fundamentally Trump does not care about foreign policy. That's the really important thing to remember. I mean, it's not his focus. He's very focused on the economy. He thinks his economic policy is actually very good. And I think, as opposed to some left-wing people or liberals, I would say that it's not necessarily that horrible. I mean, in terms of how well it will work, I think his focus is there. I think in foreign policy, he wants to pander to the APAC and, the important donors he has. I think on Ukraine, he will, try to push for a peace deal, and he
Yeah.
will, give Putin a lot if he gets peace in exchange. But for Palestine, I think it's basically just he will let Israel do what they want, and he will send them arms and money. The only thing there's one caveat here, and it is that I think, I mean, there's reason to believe that Trump is on a purely personal level will be more easily insulted than the Democratic kind of leadership. I mean, Netanyahu has to play much more carefully, and I think Netanyahu probably knows how to do that, but if he doesn't, there might be a confrontation.
So you're speaking about the dynamic of Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris going out and
Yeah.
saying, "Hey guys, we have a ceasefire deal that's imminent. We're talking with the Qataris, we're talking with the Egyptians. Hamas has agreed. It's imminent. It's happening in 48 hours." And then Netanyahu goes out and says, "Actually, no, that's not true. The war is,
Yeah.
and just kind of cucks the
Yeah.
entire U.S. establishment. So what you're saying is that Donald Trump is not going to accept that because he has like more dragon energy.
I think it's important to see how poorly the American administration has been treated by Israel over the last year. And
Yeah.
that's not usually something that the Americans are fine with. I think they're fine with it because they were so scared of having an anti-Semitism debate as soon as they would do anything against Israel. I think if Harris would have won, I think they would have stepped up kind of their game, but she didn't. And I think
Yeah.
you know,
And it
the
was all
only thing we
nothing.
can hope for is that Trump will be personally kind of offended by, not being treated as a proper.
Look, for him to be offended, he has to say something that Israel doesn't like.
Mm,
Which one of those things is there's a ceasefire deal on the table. So it depends on which route he chooses. If he goes out and tries to be like a normal person, that's in some issues he tries to be like normal, you know? He
yeah.
tries to do the normal thing. And the normal thing here would be to send someone to the Middle East. Oh my God, Jared Kushner, I guess. Uh, to send like an envoy and
There will be another episode of The End of the World next
Jesus
week.
Christ. Yeah. And it would be to send like the normal thing to do would be to
Yeah.
send an envoy like Anthony Blinken, but like Trump's Blinken, and
Yeah.
to sue for peace, right? And then come to the world and have a press conference and say we have a deal on the table. And at that point, Israel would say no, fuck you. The only thing that I think Trump is worried about is his ratings, his approval ratings. If his approval ratings go down and
Mm,
he can like prove that it's because of his policy on Gaza and his inaction or the war is just going on and people are dying and because of that he has bad
mm.
ratings. At that point there's gonna be a conflict with Netanyahu. But listen, I don't know that is the case in the US. I don't know that Americans care that much. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people do, but they're on the left, so they're gonna hate him anyway.
Exactly. That's the point. I think is that he's already lost. I mean, that vote isn't going to him anyway.
Yeah,
There is
he doesn't give
no
a
kind
fuck.
of strong bipartisan agreement that genocide is wrong in the US. Has never been. And I think on this specific issue, I mean, also, the Israeli lobby and the pro-Israeli kind of sentiment in political and media circles in the US is extremely strong and well well entrenched. I mean, and if you have a president and an administration which is 100% behind Israel, which is what we're probably going to have, there will be no other kind of organized force to push for any criticism of Israel. There will,
Yeah.
of course, be people on the left being against, the genocide, but it will not be controversial in the US to just keep supporting Israel, whatever they do.
Yeah. What do you
That's
think now about potential backlash against Arabs in the United States? And now I'm not talking about from the traditional people who hate Arabs and Muslims in the US, namely the conservatives, but from liberals who are going to blame them for Trump. I've already seen tweets being like, people who voted for Jill Stein are about to see what Trump is going to do to Gaza.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that. There's been a lot of that kind of almost fantasizing about, the repression which going to hit people who are stupid enough to not vote for Harris. And I mean, I think it's frankly, it's disgusting. Given, I mean, it just shows the lack of kind of understanding of the dynamics, the actual dynamics of American politics on the liberal
Yeah.
quote unquote left. I mean, I think what we're also seeing is something. I mean, I think a lot of people, me included, thought that was going to pause with the end of the last Trump presidency, but now
Yeah.
we're here again with the same thing once again,
It's a,
where
it's a rerun. Isn't it
yeah,
not?
it's a rerun. I mean, it's not about identity politics. That's a silly word, but let's talk about it. Every person who was interviewed on TV last night when I watched CNN and Swedish
Yeah.
TV, etc., talking about who was going to vote for Kamala. We're talking about how it's like about rights, the Constitution. It's about democracy. Uh, and this whole idea that you're voting because you're a nice person with nice values and good opinions.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is
you're
not
gonna
the real
lose
world. Yeah.
every time. You're
Yeah.
going to lose every time because people are
Right.
like, well, also I can't buy food. Also, I can't pay my rent.
I don't
You
give
know,
a fuck if Cardi B performs at your rally. I really
exactly.
don't, because I want to buy nice things for my kids.
What's up, y'all? One second, guys. 1 second. Okay. So I don't take lightly the call. Sorry, guys, I'm a little nervous.
I mean, that's also simplification, of course, but we see the same thing going over and over again now, where the Democrats are going, focusing a lot on winning the kind of suburban, specifically the female suburban vote, the female suburban white vote.
Mhm.
And they're losing the working class. And I mean, parts of that working class is actually just in a very entrenched way, super conservatives, I mean, verging on explicitly fascist, but not all of it, I mean, there is on the margin, historically, places like Detroit used to be like 100% Democratic. There would be this, you're
Yeah.
losing people who are, just cannot vote for the candidate they think is running the economy into the ground.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're right on that, but I'm saying that's why they're losing the elections. They're losing the working class vote because they are perceived as being kind of a party for people with good opinions, a lot of time to think about ethics, and who don't really have any economic woes.
Listen, I'll even say it in Arabic. هو الاقتصاد يا أهبل. Come on, like what the hell? Bill Clinton coined the fucking phrase. It's the
Yeah.
economy, you fucking idiots.
Everyone should go back
Yeah.
and watch it. It's an amazing documentary about that campaign. He is a totally ridiculous asshole, the guy who coined the phrase, his old campaign manager, but he's a
Oh yeah.
lovely kind of comic character, in that movie. I don't
Oh,
remember the name of it
no, no.
now.
What is it called?
I forgot the name of it just
Okay,
because.
we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, it's really incredible, and it's about how Bill Clinton won the election, basically on just telling everyone that Bush the elder was fucking up the economy, which he wasn't really, but they won on the idea that he was.
Nice.
That's exactly the same
Nice.
thing that happened now. And the Democrats have been saying like, oh, well, if you can just tell people that Trump is a fascist and the democracy is great and, the rights of gay people, etc., you have to protect that. I'm all for those things. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
no
sure.
one listens to this pod might think that I, could possibly think that I'm have any other opinions. I think these are all great things that are really, really important. But you're not going to win the elections if people at the same time think that you're fucking up the economy. And
Listen,
if they don't vote for the other guy, you will not, be able to pay your rent next year.
the thing that
Oh,
really, really cracked me up, and that I really don't want to be vindicated in any of this, but when people were like, after the Tony Hinchcliffe, remember we talked about it last time,
yeah,
the
yeah,
joke about Puerto Rico, and people literally, I mean, people that I respect and that are smart are like, Trump lost the election because
yeah,
Puerto Ricans are now they're mad about a joke. I'm like, you fucking listen, Puerto Ricans don't care if someone says Puerto Rico's a piece of shit, if they get more money at the end of the month, or if they perceive that their economy is going to get better. Like these Puerto
yeah,
Ricans, like I mean, if the conservative Latino vote are not concerned with this fucking shit, what a comedian says at a Trump rally. Trump has been saying insanely racist
yeah,
things against
all the
Latinos,
time.
against black people. Why would this make a difference? And people
Yeah,
were
I know, I
so
know.
obsessed with the idea that this is gonna, tip the scale. No,
Yeah,
what tipped the scale is people mad about a genocide because that's something real. It's not a
yeah,
joke.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? I mean,
Absolutely, that's something real, and they don't really care if they think Trump is going to fix it. They care that they want to punish the person who's not
exactly.
fixing it and who
And
promise to be their friend.
exactly. And the equivalent of the Tony Hinchcliffe, scandal where he slandered Puerto Rico, that
Yeah,
is our good friend, Bill Clinton, who made comments about the Israel-Palestine conflict in an incredibly, insanely stupid way. And he made comments about something that's real. Puerto
yeah,
Rico is not a floating pile of garbage. Puerto Rico is a great place, so that
yeah,
just kind of falls flat. It just shows how racist that guy is.
And I think part of it is that Hamas did not care about a homeland for the Palestinians. They wanted to kill Israelis and make Israel uninhabitable. Well, I got news for them. They were there first. Before their faith existed, they were there. In the time of King David, and the southernmost tribes had Judea and Samaria.
But I
Yeah.
mean, looking at that as well, I mean, just looking at the Puerto Rico vote idea, I mean, Trump did extremely well amongst Latinos. I mean, much better than anyone thought. I think he
Yeah.
was up to like
Yeah.
40% or something in the Latino vote. And of course,
Mhm.
we have, ultra conservative Cubans in Florida,
Yep.
always vote Republican. There's certain groups like that, but in general, the Latino vote is also strongly Democrat. And that just goes to show, I mean, this is not what's been going on. Everyone knows he's a racist. Everyone knows he hates them.
Yeah.
But just perceive him as kind of a weirdo, but he might fix the economy, and who knows?
I don't fucking
And
know,
the thing,
man.
just talking about the racism thing, is also there was this interview yesterday that was making the rounds about where they talked to, I think, if he was a mayor of Dearborn or something like that. Anyway, it was an Arab Yemeni
Yeah,
mayor
I saw that. Yeah.
of a a majority Muslim
hmm
town. And he said, like, yeah, well, I truly believe that Trump will stop the war, and he will put in place, a weapons embargo, the next
Yeah.
day after the elections. I mean, this is, I'm not sure if he
He
really said.
he got used, that guy.
Yeah, that guy wasn't doing a
It was
great
like
job.
Trump said something bad about Yemenis, and then I
Yeah,
called Trump, and he answered me, and he came, and
and
he
he
met me,
apologized
and he
to me
apologized, and he shook
personally.
my hand, and so
Yeah.
now I trust him.
Part of your endorsement based on principles you point to. Former President Trump, can you be specific and name some of the principles?
Well, first I had the opportunity to meet with President Trump, and he gave me his full attention to listen to my concerns, and he promised that he will address them. And then I think President Trump is very transparent. He always says what he believed in.
You like that?
Yes.
My interview with Hamtramck Mayor Amir Ghalib. He has shaken things up by endorsing former President Donald Trump, despite having disagreements with him. Can you give us one thing you disagree on?
We don't have high expectations. I don't want to give false promises to the people that he will do what we want to happen, but we have a hope that the main thing is to stop the war in the Middle East.
I'm like, oh,
That was what I was going to get to. The fact that, how do you do away with stuff like that? Well, you can call people up and say, like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean that. I was kind of rude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And, if you actually talk to them, as long as, I mean, and that's also the thing where the same guy said that, he comes across as, total tool, like, well,
Yeah.
I called Trump and he answered and he was really nice.
I
Of
mean,
course, it's silly.
I
But the
think
thing he also says is, like, I tried talking to Kamala Harris or to her administration. No one even answered. They
that's
wouldn't
the
even
thing.
meet with me.
That's the thing. That's
And
the
that's
thing.
like, how can you be that bad at
Yeah,
politics?
I mean, look, I
You
mean,
just had to show up and say, oh, we're really, really sorry. We're going to try to fix this. We
yeah,
have to be
yeah.
careful now, but back us and we will try to do this. They
Look, the
just
fucking
confronted them.
Democrats, they
Didn't
didn't
care.
have to ban Palestinians from speaking at the DNC.
Exactly.
Like,
They could
how?
find someone who would be very, very moderate and very,
Fuck
very,
yeah. The non-committed
sensible
movement was like
people.
extremely moderate. They were extremely moderate. They were so like kind to Kamala. They were like, just can you say one kind thing about Arabs and we'll vote for you. And she was like, no. She was
You
like,
say that you
"I did."
don't like the fact that we're being murdered as
Yeah.
you're speaking. Can you mention that that's a bad thing?
Yeah. Like, can you just say
Yeah,
like
that's
Arab
horrible.
lives matter once?
Yeah, exactly.
Bro.
Well, anyway, we're already
So Netanyahu has fired his defense minister, Yoav Gallant. What
Yeah.
does that mean? Why did he fire him? Sam, take it away.
Well, first thing to note is that he's been trying basically to fire him for 1.5 years. I think the first time he fired him, or the last time he fired him, was let's look. I have this in the notes somewhere. I think it was in March 2023. So that's even before the war started. Back then he was being fired over not accepting Netanyahu's reshuffling of the whole judiciary system to suit his own needs and to protect him from corruption charges. So there's been a tension between Netanyahu and Gallant since forever. There was a lot of rumors going around in August, I think, that he was going to be fired for opposing an invasion of Lebanon. But then he seemed to have accepted an invasion of Lebanon and was still, kept in place. But then yesterday he was fired, so no one's surprised by that per se, but we're surprised kind of perhaps over the timing. I would say, I mean, if there's any guess you might have what actually kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I would say that it's probably the fact that he just 3 days ago or 2 days ago, he sent out the first call-up order to the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel.
Right.
Historically, ultra-Orthodox kids have not been forced to join the army, as are all other Israeli citizens. This is something they've been trying to change for a long time. There, But the problem is that every government in Israel since the 70s has been dependent to some extent on the ultra-Orthodox parties, which are for some reason 100% behind this idea that if you go to Yishuv, then you should not have to fight in the army ever. Which is kind of weird because mostly they're also very militaristic, these same communities. I mean, not all of them, of course, but most of them are very, very pro the occupation. They're on the right, but they're also claiming that for them, they should not be forced to join the army. And Gallant called up, a major number of people from this community just a couple of days ago, and then he was fired yesterday. So I think a reasonable guess is that Netanyahu was put under a lot of pressure from his allies in government, the ultra-Orthodox parties, and that also, of course, on a personal level, he has nothing against firing Gallant.
Yeah. Just got the notifications now. Donald Trump is officially the 47th president.
Woohoo!
What a time to be alive. Well, should we wrap it there, Sam?
I think, about Gallant, I think we should say the last thing that needs to be said is he's also, comparing that to Trump, he's also been, he is a hawk. He is a warmonger. He likes, he's from the army. He's very much someone who is behind war per se. But he's been a moderating force in the government too. It seems very clear. He's been saying stuff like, we could reach a deal in Gaza now. We could move out. We would have won this war and we would have the hostages back. He's also said like we shouldn't invade Lebanon. We could bomb it, but we shouldn't invade, with ground forces because we will lose that war and we will not be able to carry it out. So the combination of Gallant being fired and Trump winning the election is, this is all guesswork. It's all in the future, but it seems very probable that it's very bad news for the Middle East in terms of, or for anyone who wishes for peace or de-escalation.
Well, on that terrifying note, I've been saying that a lot, haven't I? On the Kalam Digest, ending the shows on the terrifying note. Well, it's a terrifying world. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining me on this eve of destruction. My name is Edgar Mannheimer. Sam Carl Samre. That's our show.
Thank you.